This week's guest didn't set out to launch a startup. He just needed the right tools to create and ended up building one that empowers an entire community. How can we make sense of the journey from solving your own problem to solving it for other people enough to make a business? That's why my guest this week is William Tyrone Towns, co-founder and chief creative officer of Rec Philly, a platform transforming passion into profit for creators through tools, education, and economic opportunity. Will is also the author of Uncommon Sense, Your Strategy Guide to Creative Freedom. I cannot wait to explore this topic with Will. But first, welcome to this week's episode of Make Sense, a video podcast where we untangle the way technology impacts our everyday lives and shapes our world pragmatically and without the jargon. So whether you're totally hyped on artificial intelligence and ready for the robot takeover, or you want to crawl into a cave after deleting all of your social media accounts, I'm here with my guests to help make sense of what's going on so you can design your human experience into the future. My name is Lindsay T, the Lady Engineer. I am a pragmatic futurist and human-first technologist and the founder of LearnProductMarketFit.com, the hub for simplified guidance on the toughest non-coding skills needed to bring technology products to market. If you're new here, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So let's make sense of the balance we need to strike between our values and vision and creating for others. Hi, Will. How are you?
Hey, Lindsay. I'm great. Excited to talk to you.
Yeah. Thanks so much for giving me such great facial energy and feedback during my intro. I really appreciated it. Felt good.
I got you. I got your
Thank
back.
you.
Great job.
I feel supported. Our first segment on this episode of Make Sense with Will Towns, co-founder of Rec Philly, is Never Have I Ever. In this amuse bouche, I'm going to call out past internet habits, and I want you to tell me if you have or have not done that. And if
Let's
there's
go.
a funny story behind it, please share. We all
Yeah,
want to know. All right. So we've got our glasses of water and tea.
got him.
All right. Never have I ever gotten in trouble for downloading music from Napster or any other tool.
I could finish my entire glass just off of that one alone. I literally was so in I'm not gonna call it piracy, but I was in the peer-to-peer sharing space, from Morpheus to LimeWire to BearShare, Kazaa, and then after that way, obviously Napster. And then after that wave, it went into like these like cool bespoke websites to download mixtapes. So let's just say I had quite a long list on our dial-up driven computer at home of a discography.
Did you ever get in trouble for it?
No, like, it was interesting because when I started to see news coming out of people actually like getting in trouble with the government for the file sharing, I was nervous because I was like, I've got gigabytes, which was huge at that time, right? Of songs downloaded. And there was this funny joke that like if you were on Morpheus or LimeWire, some of the files, you would download a Soldier Boy song and it'd actually be something completely different. And my friends would like tell me, they'd be like, well, if you downloaded one of those, like they were tracking you and they know your IP address. So I was nervous for a little bit, but no, I never officially got in trouble or anything like that. And I was
Okay.
burning CDs for my friends all the time. So that was my era.
I'm reminded that I have a external hard drive that's about this thick and this big, and it has about 50 gigabytes of music that I copied from this guy Brett in college in 2005. It is like the most impressive discography. It fed my iPod for years after, and I can't get rid of it. It feels like, what if they take all the music away? I still need it.
I love
I
that.
still need like every album from Billy Joel, from Bruce Springsteen. It was like complete like archive. So, okay, yeah. So, never have I ever played Chat Roulette unironically.
Yeah, it was just one of those things, I think like the internet was still is, but such a unexplored space, as a kid. And yeah, I think when I would hear about these different platforms, whether they were new apps or whatever, like my friend group and me being almost like the ringleader was always down to just explore and to see what was happening. The internet was just such a portal into the rest of the world. So when Chat Roulette came up, it was like, oh wait, there's random people that I can like. At that time, we were like Ulu and like doing that whole thing. Ubu doesn't even exist anymore.
I don't even know what Ubu is.
No?
No, what is it?
Okay. So Uvu was, at least for me, it was the predecessor to Skype and Zoom. And it was really cool because you could talk to like 8 people at once, which was like a major deal back then, right? So me and my friends would Uvu all the time. But when we heard that we could like video chat with strangers, it was like, well, let's connect because I'm already chatting with strangers on AIM. So Chat Roulette just became the natural progression of, yeah, let's talk to strangers all over the country and just see what's up.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was an era. And again, I think that like because the internet was just such a portal to the rest of the world, I was that explorer who was willing to
Mhm.
engage. And fortunately, all safe experiences for the
Yeah.
most part. But yeah, I was definitely pioneering on the chat
Uh,
roulettes.
yeah, Chat Roulette became a haven of NSFW
Yeah,
content.
for sure. For sure.
But I do like the imagery of it feeling at that time, 15, 20 years ago, like it was a portal, right? Now it feels like it's our everything and it's just an extension of our hand. It's part of our lives. It's how we communicate. But it definitely felt, like you were sitting down at your desktop to do something with intention.
Yeah.
So I like that, a portal.
Yeah. And the portal thing is kind of fresh in my mind because do you know about the portal that's at City Hall, right?
I think they moved it because it's gotten butchered so many times
Yeah,
in
kind of like
Philadelphia.
chat roulette, right?
Yeah.
But it was like that, but, online. I think that portal is really just the IRL version of that, where it's like you never know what's gonna be on the other side. But, and although there's this part of humanity that always takes things way too far and the NSFW and all that, there still was this opportunity for, like, these beautiful moments of serendipity, that I think, especially at that time, when you mentioned getting online with a certain purpose, for me as a kid, like after school in middle school, getting on the internet was to be social.
Mhm.
And it started off with just like my friends, and I remember my away messages on AIM being like the first time I'm like writing copy, right? If you will. But then eventually you wanted to go beyond just like your own social group.
Mhm.
And yeah, all of these apps have just been such like a cool way to navigate that social world.
Okay, so next one. Never have I ever woken up thinking in 140 characters because I was using Twitter too much. That I will drink to.
Yeah, because why not?
When did you first join Twitter?
That's a good question. I would have to go back and look, but my gut says probably while I was early in college, right? So probably somewhere around 2009 to 2011, maybe
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like that.
makes sense. I joined Twitter in April of 2007. So literally like 4 or 5 months after it launched.
Wow. So was this in the days of you still had to like text a number, or were you on after that, like when it was actually like the app is good to go?
Time I owned a BlackBerry,
Yeah.
iPhones didn't exist yet.
Yep.
So there was a certain amount of of texting or doing it at your laptop. Probably there was a BlackBerry like web app interface, but really we only used it, my grad school friends and I in the Bay Area used it to talk to each other. It really wasn't until maybe '08, '09 where it became like a place to like hijacked by media to become a place where you demonstrate your expertise.
Yeah.
In the early days, it really was like you only saw messages if you were all friends and following each other.
Yeah. And that's such an interesting way to think about that because that's something I've been reflecting on as we were getting ready for this conversation and just like the difference of creating in a space where it's kind of like really low stakes, right? Where it's like, oh, it's just for me and my friends versus now like it's for me and my friends, but now anyone can see it. And how sometimes that changes the nature of the creative process in general. Yeah, we might have to circle back to that, but I feel you.
There's a whole podcast segment on that,
Okay.
and might not be this podcast.
Okay.
Stay tuned for part two with Will Toms. Final one. Never have I ever reorganized my MySpace top 8 for the drama. I don't remember. I used MySpace reluctantly.
I was so into it.
Yeah.
It was like, and then okay, so for context, I'm in high school when MySpace is doing its thing, middle school to high school.
What year did you graduate high school for some of us to?
Okay. I graduated high school in 2009.
Okay, got it.
So this is like, I'm like in 10th grade and MySpace is the thing, So like getting ready for school dances and like considering who's going to senior week or whatever. I don't know. Like it was just such a thing. And I remember even learning how to code a little bit so I could figure out, can I change my top 8 to a top 16 to accommodate my whole social circle? So yeah, I'm very guilty of
You want it to be more inclusive.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was a social butterfly in high school, and I mean, still a community builder now. So yeah, I wanted to be more inclusive and just try to navigate a little better.
So our timing differences are slightly different because I'm graduated high school in '01 and I was in college when Facebook came out, and I was at a prestigious enough college, University of Virginia, after the Ivies. Zuckerberg invited my school, and it wasn't until after college, 2005, 2006-ish, where some college friends were like, no, everyone's using MySpace. And it was like a good like 2006 to, I don't know, what, 2010, 11, where MySpace and Facebook were duking it out. And sometime I think around 2011, MySpace
Yeah, for sure.
saw its,
And us
yeah.
music lovers, we tried to hold out for MySpace as much as we could because it was just so much more
Mhm.
ingrained with music culture. But yeah, we
Right,
we see
right.
who won that war.
And then SoundCloud came in, right, and filled a need in there too.
That's
Yeah,
right.
cool. Oh, all right. So that ends our first segment, Never Have I Ever. I'm going to take a quick break. If you're a software developer or technologist who's been thinking about building your own product, but you want to avoid the costly mistakes most freewheeling hackers make, let me tell you about something I created just for you. It's called Blueprint to Build, and it's on learnproductmarketfit.com. Unlike most startup advice, which, let's be real, isn't written for engineers like us, this is a practical step-by-step system to help you go from idea to an actual product people want. There's a lot of garbage advice out there if you're struggling to understand your audience or deciding on which features to build or pitching your ideas clearly. Blueprint to Build breaks it down with guides, templates, and tools designed for engineers by an engineer. If you already know how to write code, this will help you learn how to execute like a product strategist so you don't waste months building something no one buys. That would suck. You can check it out at learnproductmarketfit.com. No fluff, just frameworks that actually work. All right, back to our episode. Going into our second segment of Make Sense with Will Toms, Chief Creative Officer of Rec Philly, Debugging Innovation. In this segment, we explore different approaches to innovation, strategy, and problem solving. If you're leveraging tools available like the one I just talked about on learnproductmarketfit.com, this segment will help you apply them in real world scenarios. Today, we're going to talk about creators. So whether you consider yourself an artist, musician, filmmaker, painter, writer, etc., or an engineer, you most likely start each new project with intrinsic motivation and vision. And at some point, probably there's a pivot from vision to value. And how we figure that out can determine the success of what we bring into the world. All right, Will, you've worked at the intersection of creativity, culture, and commerce for years now. When someone is just starting out, whether they're a filmmaker or an app developer or musician, what advice do you give them about protecting the integrity of their vision before outside expectations like money or customers start creeping in?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And I'll say this, I'm really interested in having this conversation with you specifically because, we're both creative entrepreneurs. We build things, we put them out to the world. And I think for me, the main difference is I think your background as an engineer is quite different than my background coming from like the artist world. Right. And one of the things that I've had to learn as an artist turned creative entrepreneur is the creative entrepreneurship journey is this perpetual toggling of different modes, right? One being like visionary mode, and then one being a bit more of like a pragmatist, servant leadership mode, right? Which is more about other people's problems and things like that. Whereas the artists come from is like, I have something I want to say, I have something I want to communicate, I have something that doesn't exist that I just wish did, right?
Mhm.
And for me, in the beginning, we started there, and it was about how do we solve our own problem first? And when I say we, I mean myself and my co-founder Dave, who, at the time when we started Rec, were early 20 somethings and we came from the creative world. We clearly knew the problems that creators like ourselves were facing, which at that time was, hey, we're in the city of Philadelphia, which is top 5 city in the country. However, with all the talent we have here, we did realize there was a disconnect between the talent here and the perception of resources to be successful, access to other amazing collaborators and other creatives to be around, opportunities to monetize here in this market. So the solve in most people's minds was, okay, cool. Well, let's move to New York or let's move to LA. And fortunately, Dave and I were naive enough to not believe in that story. And we said, well, what could we build here? First and foremost, to help ourselves be successful, right? But then also learning that all of the people we love and care about, who are also musicians, creators, photographers, whomever, they need the same thing. And I think I'm really grateful in our approach, which was first, let's solve our problem, build a studio in the middle of North Philly and really just poured in all of the things that we hoped we had access to. But then over time, there's this journey switch where it's more about, okay, we have members now, and we have people paying to have access to the space. So their voice almost feels a bit more important than my own internal voice and my own internal guiding compass. But I think the lesson, just to your question specifically, I think it's important to have your own vision, because without having your own vision, then you can easily get swayed off course and then be building something that you don't ultimately believe in. And I think having the clarity of vision and having values that you're building the thing on gives you strength in this turbulent storm of entrepreneurship. So I think it should always start there. It should start with a deep level of conviction. It should start with a, hey, if I wasn't going to get paid anything for this, this is exactly what it'd look like and feel like. But then over time, you find this way to toggle into an open-minded approach and say, okay, cool, I'm here for feedback and I want to iterate this thing with the feedback of the people I'm building for. And the last thing I'll say to this, the thing that I think helped us be successful, especially early on, is we didn't go in blind and say, let's just build a thing. We did take a moment before actually spending any money or building anything. And we said, okay, cool, let's get clear on who we are and also who we're trying to serve, because we knew, we were like, hey, we're going to solve our own problem, but we do believe that there's thousands of other people that have the same exact problem. So we said, okay, who do we want to be valued? And then we started building with the feedback of those people. But when I went to those first info sessions we would have in those town halls, I already had a really strong hunch of what the space needed to look like and what the value prop was. Because I think to like a Steve Jobs persona perspective, it's like sometimes people don't know what they want until you show them.
Mm,
Because, right, like status quo gets in the way and all of that stuff.
not everyone is creative. Like, not everyone is ambitious. Not everyone has the skills to see
Yes.
into like, imagine a future. It's just a different skill set.
That's right. And so I say all that to say, if we didn't get clear on what we kind of had a hunch about in the beginning, we could have really quickly gotten demotivated by all of the, oh, you can't do it that way. That's been tried. That's not possible. Because again, we're creating something back in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015 is when Rec actually came to be. There was no point to for resource sharing at that time, right? Like most of the people we were serving had never even heard of WeWork,
Mhm.
right? So there was no WeWork for creators came or WeWork for artists came back later to us by Forbes when they wrote about us. But like in the beginning, it was like, no, 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 we have to cast this vision. So I think the real lesson there is get clear first
Mhm.
and then figure out how to toggle and when to toggle to feedback mode, but protect the vision like an artist in the beginning.
I love that. The reason I wanted to have this conversation with you and a meeting of the minds between the traditional creator artist perception that we have and the engineer as a creator and problem solver is that we often don't heed the advice of, like you said, before you build, who are we and like who do we want to serve and like what do we value? We often just build something for ourselves, particularly for software developers. You can just build a solution that works for you, right? But I see a lot with software developers, the longer they keep building a solution that works for them, it gets harder to make it something that works for other people. So I really think what you said before you build, grounding yourself in who you are and your vision and who you want to serve. The other point that you made about owning your vision is really important because you can get caught up in the competition, right? And you can get caught up in the different market pressures and different people's feedback. And you, me, anyone else, like we are all unique snowflakes. So the more we can own who we are and pour ourselves into what we do, it's going to be unique,
Yeah.
right? You said your journey with Rec started the way many creative pursuits do. Can you take us back to the moment in the first space where you realized this wasn't just for you anymore?
Yeah, I can actually. All right, paint the scene. I'll try to do this quickly, but the scene is at this time, Dave and I were throwing almost 5 shows a week, right? Small open mics, artist showcases, and then occasionally we throw like a large concert, right? Which would actually help us actually generate some real revenue, right? And we had thrown our first sold out show at Union Transfer, which was it's on Spring Garden, if you're familiar, about almost 1,000 person venue.
Mhm.
And one of the proudest moments of our journey to date, right? We were building a production company at this point, and we had already had the studio space in North Philly, which was really just like our personal hangout. Backdrop on one wall for me to shoot videos. We had a recording studio we had built for our friend who was a recording artist, and we had the couch, right? The couch, the mini fridge, and our rug that we were really grateful for was the co-working space, right? And I remember going back to that space after we had just thrown this huge show that everyone was talking about, and I'm sleeping in this warehouse because at this point it's like we're building the thing. I had quit my full-time job. I was putting everything into this whatever was coming next, and I remember having one of those just like dark night of the soul moments where I'm like, we just did this thing that was so amazing, but I'm literally now sleeping in this warehouse in North Philly that I'm not supposed to be sleeping in. It's actually illegal to be sleeping here. And it's pouring down rain and I'm literally getting dropped from the ceiling, right? Rain coming in. And I was asking myself the question of like, what am I doing?
Mhm.
I had just given up a great job in the entertainment industry. I was running digital strategy for A-list artists and just living it. But I was like, but why? Why did I want to throw that away to do this other thing? And for me, there was this like deep moment of conviction. It was just like space, like what we've built here and what it means to the community who comes here and hangs out as we just create and express ourselves is way more meaningful than me just doing another 9 to 5 job. And I realized in that moment, it shifted from like, oh, that space was really for me to just like shoot videos and make art. And it became actually something that I got really proud of other people having access to. Right. There were people who would come and just hang out with us all the time who never wanted to leave. And that's when I called my business partner, Dave, and I was like, yo, here we
Yeah,
go. And I'm like, and it's funny because the first thing I said to him was like, you ready to be a millionaire? And he goes, yeah. And
sure.
I was like, space. I was like, bro, it's like as creatives, it's what we all need. It's why we're doing the things we're doing. And again, we had been throwing 5 shows a week at all these different venues, and it all came together. So I always look back, and that was the moment where we made a conscious effort to say, yeah, we're doing things for ourselves and we're trying to get ahead. And we said, no, no, no. We've already built something that everyone who comes into is wowed by, and they want to be here and they keep coming back. So how do we actually lean into really like servant leadership and say, how do we make this as great as it can be for the people that we want to be valuable to? And that's when the pivot started, right? And then,
What I love about this story you just told is one, you had a very meaningful moment where you realized a huge achievement, the
mhm,
union transfer concert, that the happiness from a huge achievement like that is fleeting. And the joy that you could cultivate was through the supporting of other people, empowering other people, and continuing to master your own craft in that direction. And this is, and I'm going to do something so Philly, I posted it today on LinkedIn. And this is one of the biggest takeaways from that book, Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy, that AJ Brown was reading, was that happiness from achievement is fleeting, but real joy and contentment is from living a meaningful life. And so for app developers and engineers, like seeing your stuff work for other people to solve other people's problems, there's an incredible amount of joy there. There's also an incredible amount of risk because what if it doesn't work? What if people don't like it? Our ego gets scared of that rejection.
mhm,
But it creates so much more meaning that it's putting yourself out there to serve others is super important, and what 10 years later is sustaining you and Dave, right?
that's right. That's right. Great call out.
How do you help creators stay grounded in their why when they're suddenly expected to create with an audience in mind?
Wow, that's a really great question. This comes up. I do a lot of coach, a lot of creatives in their journey, and there's always a moment where for example, we'll be talking about social media and talking about the need to feed the beast, right? And like posting consistently. And artists get in the way of themselves more than anything because of a fear, right? And I'll say this way. What typically it looks like is they won't post. They'll say, "Oh, I have creative block," or something like that. But what I've learned is more than anything, what used to be a low stakes environment, right? Where it was like, oh, doesn't matter about the likes or the comments, it's just vibes, right? Like, but then it turns into a thing where like now people expect something of you. And now there's a lot of pressure and there's stakes and there's risk involved. And that can become crippling for a lot of people. And I think there's this perception around artists, sometimes being very ego driven, right? But I think the real, like,
Everyone is ego driven. Sorry to interrupt,
for
but like
sure,
all
right?
humans are ego driven.
Absolutely. And I think the experience of some artists is they're always again toggling between Kanye level egomania and like crippling self-doubt. And that just can be all in the same day sometimes, right? And I think when people get that creative block, really what it comes down to, I've found, is they're afraid to put out bad work, right? Like they want everything they post to be a home run, everything to go viral, everything to be the thing that everyone loves. And that's just not what the creative process is like, right? Anyone who's been successful knows that it's a million failures that iterate into your success, right? And what I've helped people do to stay grounded is to create from a place of gratitude and to create from a place of service. And what that typically looks like is being like, hey guys, like if you didn't post today, I bet when you first started, there's that person that you had in your mind that you wanted to be helpful to. And the fact that you're stopping yourself from showing up, you should probably stop and think, well, what are you robbing them of from you not being willing to show up and do your thing? And I think taking that more selfless approach, take the pressure off about, oh, you posting and being the best, but shifting it and saying, remember, you're here for service. So who loses if you don't do your thing, if you don't show up? And I think that grounding has been really helpful for myself personally, but also in dozens and dozens, if not 100 of creators who I get to coach, because sometimes we just get lost in it, right? And we're in the likes and all the validation. But at the end of the day, it's like most of us are here for service.
I love this again because the service mindset and helping others brings so much joy. Um, and it helps us stop thinking about all the people that might judge us and gets us to think about all the people that we can help, right? There's a affirmation, I don't use it that often, but like stop robbing the world of your gifts.
That's right. Yeah.
I like the opposite. There are people waiting to hear from me.
Mhm. And the reality too, and you kind of highlighted this a little bit earlier. It's like there's so much information out there, right? People can get messages from anywhere. But the reality is like there's a person out there who is only ready to receive what they need from you, right? Whether it's because of your makeup, right? Your vibe, where you come from, what you look like, your tone of voice. So if you don't show up, they're the ones that really get to miss out. So yeah, that's what it's all about for me.
Also love this and the is specifically the in question of, staying grounded in your why. Two of the top 10 reasons startups fail is not enough passion and not the right team. And not the right team can be skills or because there isn't enough passion for the customer and solving the problem. So whenever I have entrepreneurs come to me who are considering a pivot to chase some other opportunity, advice to ground yourself in your why and what makes you feel good is so important because oh, you're going to go serve the audiology industry? Like, do you like the audiology industry? Is that interesting to you? Are you going to have the conviction to sustain you for a long time? Are you going to be relentless in your pursuit of getting this problem solved? And the answer is usually no if they're going towards something that doesn't align with their values or mission or who they really want
Yeah.
to help.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think the best way I've heard it explained, I think Naval says startups don't die when they run out of money. They die when the founders run out of energy. Right. And that's really, what you're kind of encapsulating in there. It's, again, if you don't build the thing from like an internal place and like have the clear vision, it's hard to muster up the passion day in and day out when you're getting punched in the face by the market, by investors, right? By everybody. So that's why I like always warn people of just like chasing, right, what the market wants, or chasing what the press is covering these days, or chasing the format the radio wants, right, for the musicians. Because I think the only thing worse than being successful is like getting critical success and fame for a thing you never believed in, right? Because imagine being an artist and like you put your whole life into being a musician, and then one day you decide to do the TikTok dance, right? And that's the post that goes viral, and now everyone sees you and they're like, "Do that little dance you be doing." And you're like, actually, I have this really great spoken word poetry that I want to be known for, right? So it's just so important, to always keep yourself centered at everything you do, because the reality, and you know this as an engineer, it's like we don't get to pick what we're famous for.
Mm,
Us, it's the market's job to do that. It's only our job to create the thing and put it into the market, but ultimately the people decide what's a hit and what's not. So yeah, you got to
mhm.
be courageous enough to stand on your square. And,
Yeah,
even when things
I
are
love that.
obscure, the reality is like typically innovation is unpopular in the beginning until you stand the test of time and, keep putting your foot in front of the other every day, and really pushing to work towards this thing and solving the problems. And then before you know it, that thing that used to be obscure is almost like super obvious to the world,
Mm,
right?
mhm,
But you have to be
mhm.
willing to fight through all of those small problems to get there. And if you don't have the energy for it, or the passion and the true drive, there's really no shot.
Right, right. I love that. So you have talked about the shift from just doing your thing to building something sustainable.
Yeah,
Is there a mindset that you had to unlearn on your path from passion to profit?
so many. Yeah, so many, for real, for real. The first one, I'll give you the ones that just pop into my mind. Like the first one was, it's not about you, bro. That was the first one. Because in the beginning, again, if you're an artist, it's like you put the thing out and you get some acclaim, or like, hey, I was throwing events and people love them. So it's like, oh, Will, you're so cool. Right. But then eventually you have to realize that like the thing I'm putting out into the world is actually not about allowing, like, getting people to connect to me. It's actually about how do I create the thing that allows people to connect better to other people,
Mm,
right? Most of the best businesses in the world are actually just like a layer on top of human connection.
mhm,
So I had to like get myself out of the way, right? Enough to be able to just build the thing for people. So
mhm,
that was like an unlearning in the beginning. Secondly, I had to unlearn as a creative, like where value existed in the landscape. For example, I remember fundraising in the early days. So we were in a warehouse in North Philly, no heat, no AC, just a lot of vision. And at those early days of fundraising, it was so easy to put all of the value on the other side of the table when talking to a potential investor, and I had to eventually do the inner work and be like, bruh, like they only have the money,
mhm,
like they give you the money and then you still have to show up and do the work every day. You still have to leverage the positioning and the insight that only you and your team had, right? Like, so there was this thing about unlearning that like value and money were like the same, right? And you had to understand that, like, no, there's all of this potential here and all this value here that you know how to create, and now is the time for you to also learn how to capture it. So there was that.
mm,
And then also just because of the context of kind of my background, I had to unlearn all these like money racket issues around just like what it meant to have a lot of money. And like, I grew up in a community where like people would tell themselves the story that anyone who had a ton of money somehow did something crooked to get it, right? And what happens is you become a money repellent
mhm.
psychologically. So I even had to unlearn like how money worked and my relationship to money, which was really important. So yeah, there's been tons of unlearnings. And then the final one I'll just say is this: I had to unlearn that the person I was starting the company was going to be the person I'd be when I sold it, which means that like, oh yeah, I already got it. I'm perfect. I'll learn a little bit here and there, but like mainly I'll be the same person, right? I had to unlearn that because that actually wasn't true. Every new phase of my company required a different version of leadership from me, right? And I had to go and become that new version of that leader. And it took me a while to like really understand that and like sink into that. And eventually it got to the point where that thing in the beginning, which was like, oh, I am my customer. My needs and my problems as I grew as a successful entrepreneur started to be different from the problems that my customer had. And I had to be okay with that. And I had to almost like
Mm,
mourn my identity as being like, oh yeah, I'm a creator just like you guys are creators. And it was like, wait, we're actually not at the same part of our journey anymore.
mhm.
That's okay. And your role is different. So I had to unlearn that. I guess I would like subconsciously, I don't want to use the word demonize, but I would like look down on like the change in me, right? Because it was like, oh, I can do all the things, be super successful, and never have to change, right? But it's like my favorite rapper says like, you don't work this hard to stay the same, actually. So like
Who's that?
Jay-Z. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
He's
Cool.
yep. So
So I heard three things. One, in the previous question I asked, you said something. You said, just stand on your square. And I like love that saying. I wrote that down. Okay. So three things that you had to unlearn. One is about taking things too personally, and like the ups and downs of the business are not the ups and downs of you. They are different, and keeping those separate, it takes a lot of mind and internal work.
and again, for
um,
artists, that's like
it's so hard because what they're putting out is it's so vulnerable and precious to them. And as I've been going through my journey of becoming a creator with Make Sense and some of the different series I've put together for YouTube, I've felt that vulnerability. It's like this high of something you're so excited about, but then, you know, maybe you don't get all of the validation that you want because, again, we don't know which video is going to work or which thing we put out there is going to work. And yeah, I did this series of reaction series to Silicon Valley HBO season one last fall, and I realized I paid attention to all the fears and things that I was feeling as I put everything out there. And one, I heard people tell me like, if you're an artist and creator and you're feeling those fears, then you're on the right path. And two, I was surprised by my own neediness for validation from others. So, I also liked the conversation about money, and there's a bunch of lessons in there, but the one that I think would really be valuable for technologists building tech startups is that thinking fundraising will solve all of the problems, right? Money is just a vehicle, but it doesn't mean that like it addresses the issue that you haven't figured out how to build brand awareness, or you haven't built a HR department, or you don't know how to replicate user acquisition. Doesn't Fundraising might give you personal validation, but it doesn't it doesn't validate the business. And we know that because there's so many startups that fail and close. I think last year over like $4 billion of investment dollars down the drain
zero.
based on all the startups that closed. So, and then you have to transform and evolve, and you have to welcome those changes. I love that because I talk about entrepreneurship as like a personal quest, and that if the fastest route to learning about yourself is through entrepreneurship,
Yes, deeply.
because you are living on the edge of what makes you uncomfortable all the time. Like, if something needs to get done and you have fear to do it and you don't do it, nothing happens. So, if you really want your business to grow, you have to push past that fear. Every time you push past that fear, you are growing.
100%. If you really want your business to grow, you must grow.
Yep. Love that. You can put that on a t-shirt. All right. So I could keep talking to you forever, but I think we will go with the final question right now. So as we close this episode, for creators and engineers listening right now who might feel stuck between, their truth and what the market seems to demand, what would you say to help them keep going without losing themselves?
The clearer we can get on who we're looking to serve, the easier the rest of the journey gets. I think it's easy to think that, hey, I'm one in a million, there's no one like me. But the reality is, like, even if you're one in a million, the data still shows what there's 8,000 people on the planet just like you, something like that. I think that's how it really
Yeah.
works. So doing that upfront work to really just get clear on who the end user is, what they find valuable, and how that authentically aligns with yourself, and then going as big as you can in that. I think it's one of those things where if you redefine what success looks like for you, success becomes inevitable, with consistency. Because, what I'm learning on the journey is as a real creator, the thing that we're really generating in the marketplace before the money is trust. And that trust only comes from clarity and consistency. So for anyone who's doing it and they're like wavering because, all of the external pressures, it's like you're on the right path. And on a long enough timeline, it's inevitable that you'll be successful. So do you want to waver now and change, or do you want to stay true to why you started? So I would encourage them to stay true and know the rest is not up to you. You just get to keep creating.
What an awesome, awesome way to end. So let's make it make sense. You don't have to choose between your vision and your value if you cultivate a service mindset. And the moment you do start creating for others is the moment you start building something bigger than yourself, which is amazing and sustaining. So thank you for listening to Make Sense with me, your host, Lindsay T, and guest, Will Toms. Will, your insights were rich with emotion, transformation, and insight. We hope you enjoyed our take on the journey from solving your own problem to solving it for other people enough to make a business. As a reminder aside, if you're a technologist with big ideas but want a smarter way to build, check out Blueprint to Build at learnproductmarketfit.com. It's a practical guide I made for engineers to turn ideas into products people actually want. You've got the code. This gives you the clarity. Will, where can people find you online?
Yeah, you can find me on all the interwebs at the Will Toms, Will, last name Toms, Toms. Most active on Instagram. So follow me there.
Okay.
And send me a message if you like what I'm talking about and want to continue the conversation. I will likely voice memo you back.
We love to hear from you, and I need to build upon that. Like, creators love to hear from their audience. To be honest, I'd rather get 5 likes on a post and 3 direct messages than 1,000 likes and radio silence. The engagement to me is so much more important because of that service mindset. We have joy giving and we have joy hearing about your successes and helping you further. So, final note, if you want to continue to be the smartest person in the room, make sure you're getting notified when each episode hits. On YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And for audio only, follow wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you all for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Lindsay.